Welcome back to the broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for sticking with us through that 3-minute break. We are live, moving into the second hour of our live broadcast. Thank you guys again for being here for your daily dose of deep programming. My name is JD, just like yesterday and just like it'll be tomorrow. Always my name. So right now, I have to tell you guys, I am super excited to be joined by the one and only Jamie Hanshaw. For those of you who don't know, Jamie is a second-generation conspiracy theorist, okay? She grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and she was exposed, like most of us, at a very early age to the growing world of truth seekers, alternative historians, the Clinton scandals, the FEMA activities, and the witchcraft that we've all seen in the Saturday morning cartoons. She was raised as a Christian in the church for 25 years and also taught Sunday school. So she's very knowledgeable about the Bible, the life of Jesus, Islam, Satanism, Mormonism, exorcism, and all the other isms that you can think of. And further studies include the occult activities of secret societies, the Freemasons, magic, sorcery, the Kabbalistic rituals, and the Hollywood trauma-based mind control. And Jamie, with co-writer Freeman, is compiling all of this information into a fully illustrated and well-referenced compendium of the occult mind pattern programming of Hollywood and the mainstream media in their new book, Weird Stuff, Operation Culture Creation. I got a chance to peruse that book yesterday, and I've got to say, first and foremost, Jamie, what an amazing collection of information and pictures that you have put together in this book. I guess I should say, first and foremost, Jamie, thank you very much for joining us on the Red Pill Reports today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. This is one of my very favorite topics when my producer Jeff told me that we were going to be talking about culture creation. Oh my gosh, my mind just lit up, because I don't think people necessarily, combine those two ideas in their minds. You know, mind control is one of those things that we all kind of know about, but the facet of it, which correlates to culture creation, I think is so important because so much of our culture is reinforced very subtly by TV and by the news and all the stuff that we read and see by the religion organizations that we're all a part of, and then that subtle difference, I think, or that subtle agenda is just so important to understand. I love the fact that you chose that as the focus for your book. Would you mind, before we kind of delve into this idea of culture creation, just telling us a little bit more about yourself and your background and how it was that you became so invested in this fight against the creation of culture by these agendized evil people?
Sure. Well, I was raised in a Christian family, and I like to think of my parents as true Christians because they didn't really get along with a lot of the mainstream churches. We had to leave a lot of churches. We were kicked out of a lot of churches just because our views were very left-wing. Not that they were unsupported, but, churches a lot of times aren't very supportive of getting the conspiracy out because they're afraid of offending people, they're afraid of losing members, and so in this way we feel a lot like we're alone in this battle against Satan, and we could really use the Christians' help, but they're just not willing to look deeper into the conspiracy and farther than what their pastor will tell them, right? So, my mom, she's a warrior, she's a truth seeker, she was iconoclast. Before there even was such a, conspiracy movement, we were going to the Bible bookstore and renting VHS tapes on, black helicopters and FEMA camps and Clinton scandals, everything that happened back in the 90s. She was on top of it. She was on top of the, what we see now, the sex education in school where they take it way too far, right? Now they're teaching kids how to use strap-ons and anal sex and things like that. But so back in the 80s and 90s, she was, on board meetings trying to protect schools and vote against these kind of things. So I just kind of, watched her and took it from there. When I met Freeman, that's when it all blossomed. Well, actually, when I read The Biggest Secret, it kind of put together all my Christian learning about the occult, and then the other side, which just was like, when you read David Icke, you're like, wow, this is a lot of information to take, but it actually makes sense when you come from the background that we come from.
Mm-hmm. Well, could you talk a little bit about the book, Weird Stuff?
Uh-huh.
What is it that inspired you to write it, to get it all out, and what do you think is the most important takeaway for people? What is the one thing that people are really going to learn when they read this book?
Okay. Well, I wanted to make something that people could share with their friends, because the biggest complaint we get is like, I know all this stuff and I'm very awake and aware, but I have no one to talk to about it. Mm-hmm. My family doesn't believe me. My friends think I'm crazy. So I really wanted to write something that they could hand off that was very passive and wasn't called, the Unified Grand Conspiracy or anything. It's just called weird stuff. And that actually has a special meaning for me too, because I was in a relationship early on, and he was a Christian. He was much too kind-hearted to see the conspiracy. He was one of those people who were like, well, they wouldn't do that, right? Once you get deeper and deeper and find out what the elite actually practice and what they believe in and what they project on people, he just wouldn't believe that they could do that. And so I would spend all day, and I know a lot of conspiracy theorists go through this phase where they're just like a sponge, right? They're glued to their computer 24/7 trying to learn everything they can, put it all together, and, it takes hours and hours and lots of times. And so he would come home and be like, what have you done all day? Just look at weird stuff. And you can't explain to someone who doesn't know what I've done. Well, I've, been learning about Freemasons. I've been learning about OTO. I've been learning about Sirius, whatever the weird topics are of the day that just blew your mind. And so it gets really lonely when you can't share your discoveries with other people. So that's why I really wanted to write this, that if you had someone who was on the fence and they didn't like to read a lot, or just was unwelcoming of the information, I wanted to write something that you really couldn't argue with. There's a lot of occult things in there, but it's all backed up by scientific discoveries, and there's really nothing in there that's a lot of conjecture. It's very provable. And I wanted to make something that was a lot like a tabloid magazine, because I think that those get passed around a lot, and I wanted my book to get passed around a lot too. Mm-hmm. And so I just really wrote it for people who can put it on their coffee table and let their friends and family pick it up at their own leisure and not be too scared of it. Because the one thing that I would want people to take away is that there's really nothing to fear about this information, and fear is where they want you to be at. And so one of our new slogans is wonder without fear. And so that's the point of my book. It's something that you can look and be like, well, that's weird, but I don't want to be too living in fear about this, because there's always things we can do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad
it's not over yet.
Yeah, well, of course it's not. Well, they always say it's going to be okay in the end, so if it's not okay, then it's not the end. Yep. That's the way I go with it. But I'm glad you brought it up in the framework of a spiritual battle, though, because a lot of people, when they talk about these mind control things, we talk about the money powers, the families that run the wealth and the power in the country, and that most of the wars that we see, most of the strife that we see, stems from this desire for power. But I think perhaps that you bringing up this idea of the occult influence is super duper important. And I'm wondering, how many different arenas have you been able to kind of identify the occult, influence in this arena of culture creation?
Well, almost everyone, right?
Right.
I could do this all day, point out how lots of things in culture go back to Thelema, first of all, and then, deeper into Satanism and witchcraft. And, what did you say? Oh, power. Okay, so here's the thing about power grabbing, is that when you find out what the elite practice and what they believe and how far this goes back, all the way to ancient Babylon, you find out that this is actually a cycle of abuse, right? Because people are power grabbing, and then so they train their children to fear and abuse them, and they grow up and abuse other people. So even in witchcraft, it's very hierarchical. Mm-hmm. So they're abused at the beginning until they grow up and become the abuser, and this is where their power comes from. So they're trying to escape this cycle of victimization, and power grab is the only way they can do it.
Mm-hmm. So how does the Monarch programming come into this? Is that still a practice that's going on around the world today, or was that a flash in the pan kind of thing?
No, definitely, and I think it's even getting bigger and stronger. So the Monarch program actually came into being after World War II, right? They brought in all the Nazi scientists to work together with the government against the USSR.
Yep.
Yeah, Project Paperclip, okay? So then they created MKUltra, where they were doing all these experiments with LSD and drugs and psychotronic weapons and mind control experiments. And so that what grew out of this was the Monarch program, where they actually married together these ancient bloodlines who are used to doing horrible things in secret and then putting on another face for the crowd, because this is what the queens do, this is what kings do, this is what politicians do. They're one person in private, and then they have to be their public persona. So they figured out early on that, you know, kids can't keep secrets like this. You can't be going out and teaching your children to, you know, sacrifice animals in the woods and then expect them not to talk about it. So they had to find a way that these people could be different people and not even remember the things that they had done. And so they brought this Monarch project in, which was satanic, generationally abused families. So people who had been doing the Satanism in secret for generations, they recruited them because they were more familiar with this disassociation, what I'm talking about being two different people, right? And so you see this in popular culture a lot, where they have the different personalities. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, yeah, okay. I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, yeah, you did, totally.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was taking notes and thinking about, well, one of the questions that comes to mind regarding the Monarch programming is, is it still affecting kids now? I mean, is there still an ongoing process of you know, keeping these kids segregated and doing what it is? Like, what's the actual process that they use to create these, you know, split personalities in these kids?
Well, it all has to do with trauma torture. So what they figured out was that you can stress the brain out so much that it thinks that, you know, it goes into a different, it makes different amnesic barriers between experiences. And so people who have been in this very heavily are constantly disassociating, switching into different personalities. One doesn't even remember what the other's doing. And this all starts, if they're generational, then they're pretty much tortured in the womb, and then they have a ritual birth, and then they have a satanic baptism, and they have, you know, they just begin it right when they're a fetus, basically, and torturing the mother tortures the baby, and it goes from there. So the rituals get more and more detailed, and you know, the systems that they can create in a mind is just it's very amazing what the brain can do to protect itself from trauma. And I do think this is going on, and I think that we can almost prove it, you know, using the signs and symbols in popular culture. I think Vigilant Citizen has done a good job chronicling pretty much every video and personality that has these Monarch symbols placed on them. And so we can't know for sure until they actually come out and say, yes, this has happened to me. I've grown up in this environment, and I'm ready to talk about it, because sometimes they can't even realize that it's happening to them because they don't even recall.
Right. Well, okay, so then for those of us who who might suspect that somebody that we know was a victim of the Monarch programming, are there any kind of telltale signs or things that you could look at in someone and say, I think that person might have been a subject of this program? Are there anything out, you know, that we could recognize from a distance?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I put up a article about Beyonce, and I just picked the top 10 signs of Monarch programming, like really, really visible, obvious signs of Monarch programming in popular culture.
Okay.
And the first one is obviously monarch butterflies, because that's how the scientists learned that you could pass information through your kids genetically. It's called genetic memory, right? And this is the ability to disassociate. If you want to get weirder and weirder, like down the David Icke trail, it's more closer to the reptilian entities. You know, their DNA has been wired to receive these type of demonic serpentine spirits that possess them.
Right.
So program, if you see butterflies at all, and that's the first sign.
Why is that correlation there? What does the butterfly have to do with the ability to separate people's personalities? I guess I'm confused on that.
Because they were studying the monarch butterflies, and when they migrate, they take 3 generations to get to where they are and back.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right, and so the children are migrating in the same path that their parents were without even knowing the way, and so they figured out this is how information can be passed on genetically.
So you're saying some of these victims then wear butterflies like on their clothing and things like that, or when they're putting out albums? Okay.
Yeah. So, you look at Katy Perry, her thing is covered in butterflies. You look at Miley Cyrus has a song about butterflies. So this also goes to the butterfly effect, right? Have you heard that? Which is chaos math, where one tiny cause can cause a great effect. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing right now, I think, is they're using all these program monarchs to traumatize and program humanity on a grand scale. So it's like what they're doing to one body, they want to do to the entire population. So it's like Monarch programming 2.0 that we're seeing now. Definitely, yeah. Okay. And so the second sign that I would say, if you were trying to, I'm looking at celebrities, people who, can't really talk for themselves. We can talk about personal people. If you meet someone and you think they've gone through, we can talk about later. But in pop culture, I would say the second sign that you would look for is an alternate personality, right? So how many pop stars do you know who go by a different moniker, right? You've got
Prince, Bono,
Roman Polanski. You've got even back to David Bowie. He was Ziggy Stardust.
Yep.
Eminem is Slim Shady. So that's the second red flag that I would say that you put on your list to try and decipher if these people you think they've gone through the Monarch programming or not. Okay. If you want me to, we can go through all 10 if you want.
Yes, I would love to.
Okay.
I would love to.
Okay, so the third one I would say is possession/satanic imagery. So this is where you get Beyonce saying, I can't perform without Sasha Fierce, right? So she has to be this alternate personality. This is Nicki Minaj, Roman Polanski. This is Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana. And then the satanic imagery, like, you have Katy Perry going on the VMAs doing this, witchcraft ritual. You have Lady Gaga going on American Idol singing with a giant burning Lucifer while they're dripping blood.
Right.
It's like, this is prime time.
Totally subtle. Totally subtle.
It used to be satanic imagery was saved for, very dark, heavy metal and grindcore and things like that. But now we're seeing it leak into just the bubblegum pop that everybody listens to on the radio.
Well, I'm wondering if that has to do with your, this idea of the culture creation 2.0 that, they've successfully created enough of these monarch people now, and now the goal is to get them out in front of people and to make it okay for Katy Perry to, summon Satan at the VMA Awards or stuff like that.
Right.
Okay, number 4. What's the number 4 flag?
So number 4 I would say would be beta kitten sexual programming.
What?
So this is this is when they create an alter who is just basically a sex slave, right?
Okay.
And so the very first person that they put out in the spotlight that I think was under Monarch mind control would be Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, okay.
And she was the first presidential model mind control slave, meaning she was up for, given to JFK and his brother and, God knows who else in Hollywood.
Right.
But this is destroying of their inhibitions that they learned in childhood about sexuality and just totally blowing those out of the water and program them to be nothing but a sex slave. And so these monarchs are used for a lot more. They're used for couriering information. They're used for drug trafficking. They're used for blackmail. They're used for sex rituals. And so whenever you see a pop star in a kitten persona or with like feline type imagery, I have a picture on my article, Beyonce doing sees with the leopard print all over her.
Wow. Okay.
So this is another marker of Monarch programming. One of the big ones is beta kitten sexual programming.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So number 5, I would think, would be occult hand signs. So you see all these guys throwing up, that hand sign where they just make a O with their index finger and their thumb, and the other 3 fingers are up. I'm sure you can Google, you can see all of the stars doing this, Madonna, Justin Bieber. Mm-hmm. So when you see them doing these occult hand signs, that's a big clue, because these are very ancient, right? Okay. And especially the one that they have marked as 666. I don't think that is actually 666. I know for a fact that that's actually called the sign of the Vesica Pisces.
Are we talking about the okie dokie sign?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And so this is ancient, what they would use to say that you are in the secret society. You are in the womb of our society and under our protection. And so another sign they use is the triangle, when they put their thumb and index fingers together with both hands and look through the triangle. Okay, so everyone is like, this is a Illuminati pyramid. And, maybe, but this is actually, in magic, is known as the triangle of manifestation. So you would use this as a focus for your will, and this has to go into thelemic magic as well. But you make this triangle and you look through it and you focus on what you want. You can use it to put the moon's powers into a talisman. I mean, there's all sorts of uses that they have outlined for these hand symbols that are not just Pyramid of the Illuminati. And then another one I wanted to talk about was the peace sign, right? You see people using just the 2-finger peace sign all the time.
Right.
And this is actually an occult hand sign that Aleister Crowley taught Winston Churchill during World War II, because the Nazis were using the solar sign of the swastika. Mm-hmm. And so Churchill went to Crowley and said, what kind of sign can I use to defeat them? And so he gave them these 2 fingers as the sign of Typhon, of the abyss.
Wow, okay.
To battle the solar powers of the swastika. So whenever you see these 2 fingers, it's not peace. This is Typhon. And he is the Dark Lord of the abyss and Satan in a lot of religions.
Right. Wow, that is so fascinating. And it makes me want to ask you about Jim Carrey. I think it was last week. Did you see him come on to, I don't know which tonight,
yeah.
And he did the tongue thing?
Yeah.
Now, what was that about? Now, is that him
coming? All mocking tongues. So this is so meta, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like I said before, these people wouldn't even hardly know that they were going through this, because they've been disassociating their whole life. Mm-hmm. And so even if Jim Carrey was part of this, he wouldn't know unless he would actually go to a therapist, put all this stuff together, say, I was raised in this type of family, I remember this kind of ritual, which they almost never do. So he gets on and pretty much mocks all conspiracy theorists with his all mocking tongue. Mm-hmm. And this is just another.
Was it just a thumb in the face kind of thing? We're just like, we're here, we do it, we don't care what you think, and we're just going to make fun of it just to make it more.
No, on this level, I don't think he thinks that he is in the Illuminati. I think these people think that they're great people and they're doing the right thing.
Oh.
Because they all have handlers that tell them what to do and that can control them, that can put them in a different personality with the flip of a snap of a finger or a code word, or it's called a trigger, right? So whatever they can use for a trigger, they can just put these people in another state of being. You can see this, I think it was a long time ago, Britney Spears went with Diane Sawyer and she starts crying, and then she just has this like, whoa, Britney, and comes back a happy person. So you just saw her switching alters, disassociating, coming back as a different person who can handle this type of responsibility.
Right. Wow. This is just amazing stuff. Amazing stuff, Jamie. Okay, so let's move back into our list of things, if you could. I think we were at number 6.
Number 6, I would say, would be masks or bondage. Okay, so masks have this obvious reference to different people, different faces, different personalities. And then the bondage, the S&M type stuff that we're seeing coming out with like, Britney and Rihanna sing a song called S&M and where they're chained together. And so these people are actually slaves, and slavery is the biggest, issue, I think, that we face today. If you think slavery is dead, then that's crazy, because all these people are actually slaves. And
there's 36 million of them on the planet, according to a report that came out of India just last week.
Mm-hmm. And now they've turned the plantation global, basically, and they've set it up so that we enslave ourselves. So, here in America, we go to our crappy job that barely pays the rent, but then we have to have an iPhone 6, so you go out and spend your hard money on iPhone 6, which, the minerals that they needed to mine that, they had to, put the gorillas in a concentration camp in the Congo. I just watched this documentary about, there's hardly any gorillas left because they've discovered oil in the Congo, and they pretty much strip mined it, used for all the precious metals they needed to keep the technology going. Everybody needs a new iPhone every year, so we got to mine this stuff. We got to put the people in slavery to get it. You got to buy a diamond ring for your princess program's fiancé, which was, mined out of the dirt by some guy in his underwear under duress, at the gunpoint.
Well, we've got to take a quick break here, Jamie. We're going to be back in 3 minutes. I want to get into some more of these indications of mind-controlled victims, and talk a little bit about pop culture as well. Keep it right here, 3-minute break.
So, you want the news and information without the hate, the hype, the fear? Well, you've come to the right place. You can support Truth Frequency Radio by spreading the word on social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, or your favorite forums. Want to take Truth Frequency Radio on the road? Listen on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or other mobile devices. Want more than just the free stuff? Sign up for a VIP membership for as little as $4 a month and get super high-quality downloads, member-only content, and instant access to your favorite shows without the wait. It's only through your loving support that we're able to cover the cost and continue broadcasting. So now, stay tuned for more Free Speech Radio right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. KTFRN. Worldwide.
Time and time again.
You need to come here and help us. We need assistance, please.
Those we should be able to depend on let us down.
Federal and state and local officials saying help is on the way. Well, the folks here in Bell Harbor say, show me.
Don't depend on the government to save you. Take action now so that you're prepared for the next disaster with MyPatriotSupply.com. Get the best prices on storable food, non-GMO seeds, water filtration devices, home canning equipment, survival and self-reliance books, and more at MyPatriotSupply.com. Call 866-229-0927.
We are hurting down here, and we need help immediately.
Before it's time to survive, it's time to prepare. MyPatriotSupply.com. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Since our founding in 2005, we at YouTube have continually strived to bring you the best possible video experience on the internet. But now, we're updating YouTube to make it even better and give our users more of what they want. Introducing YouTube Plus, the new and improved version of YouTube. We're bringing a whole bunch of great new additions to YouTube. First of all, we're leveling the playing field by entirely removing subscriptions. You know how we've been phasing out subscriptions and making them less and less important by taking them off your home screen? Well, now subscriptions are non-existent. Everyone is equal. YouTubers that put in hours and hours of effort to make quality videos will be at the same level as 12-year-old Call of Duty gamers and video bloggers. Now you might be asking, how do I know what to watch now? Well, now your home screen is going to be filled with videos we think you'll like. Did you accidentally click on a My Little Pony video once? Well, now your home screen is going to be filled with videos just like that.
YouTube Plus. We own 99% of the content creators.
32 Degrees of Insanity with Donnie Gilson.
Sunday on Truth Frequency Radio.
ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for sticking with us through that 3-minute break. We are in our final segment of today's show, the last half an hour, as it were. We are joined by the one and only Miss Jamie Hanshaw today, and we are learning all about Monarch programming and the creation of culture in terms of pop culture right now, I think is kind of where we are at. And we were talking, man, I'll tell you, this list, Jamie, that you have given us as far as indicators for how to tell if somebody has been Monarch programmed or might potentially be a victim. This is amazing. I mean, honestly, a lot of the things that you have mentioned to me, the masks or the bondage, this beta kitten sexual fetish thing, I mean, these are some really substantial things. And I'll tell you, when you look around the pop culture players these days, these all stand out. I mean, they're really, really, really boldly standing out. We were kind of, I think, at about number 6, and you said you had about 4 more good indicators. Could we hop back into that?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, this isn't one of them that I wrote down, but disassociation, okay, what we talked about before. How many times in a video has the star of the video gone through the entire thing and then woken up like it was just a dream?
You mean like music videos or movies and things? Yeah,
so watch this. Next time you're watching, look for these indicators and look for how many times they start out in one persona, they go into the dream world, which is the bulk of the video, and then at the very end they wake up and it was all a dream.
Wow, okay.
Right. Okay, so we said mass bondage, S&M. Okay, number 7 I would think would be, I just put multiplicity / broken mirror / hypnotic imagery. So multiplicity, again, is this idea of I am not one person, I am many people. And you see, example, Beyonce's Pepsi commercial in 2013 where she comes in and each mirror is a different version of her. Right?
Yeah.
And in a lot of videos, you'll see that they split the person up into 2 people or 3 people, and you think this is just artistry, but this is a code that these people have been under mind control. So broken mirrors a lot comes up. When you're watching videos, they look in a mirror and then they break it because this represents the fragmentation of their mind, their personality. And then the hypnotic imagery, which would be like flashing lights, strobe lights, swirly black and white. You know that black and white swirl that's just kind of like an infinite swirl?
Yeah.
So Beyonce likes to use this a lot. And this actually, this is a straight from programming a child. And we have a friend named Jay Parker who was raised under this satanic ritual abuse, and we showed him this part in South Park where the I don't know if you've seen this episode, but it's like the one where Chef goes with the Secret Adventure Club or Super Adventure Club. It's called The Return of Chef.
Okay.
And so it's about this club of men who travel around the world to have sex with little children to get their energy, basically. They have a funny name for it, like midi-chlorians or something, but they're telling you this is like actually true. And so the guy in the Super Adventure Club tries to hypnotize Chef with this little spinny hand spinner, and he goes, you're under my control now. And Jay Parker, our friend who was a survivor of this, said, my dad had one of those.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he said, my dad had one of those. He used it on us all the time when we were bad. He just turned the spinner on, say, look at this, and disassociate into another
Wow.
realm.
You just pegged my creepy meter. I mean, my creepy meter is now pegged, ladies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so number 8, I would put Wizard of Oz. So this is a really weird one because the Wizard of Oz is a perfect, what they want to do is blur the lines between fantasy and reality, and this is called confabulation. So you can't actually tell on your perpetrators because nobody would believe you. So they purposely place things in the ritual that make no sense. They would wear a Frankenstein mask or walk on a rope when the child is being tortured so that they could say the floating Frankenstein was torturing me and nobody would believe them, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so the Wizard of Oz is actually a theosophical fairy tale, and it has a lot of occult undertones in it. Let me get my notes, because this is actually in my book, Weird Stuff 2.
I want to let everybody know, too, while we're waiting Freeman TV is the freemantv.com is the website where you can go and you can learn more about Jamie and her husband, Freeman, and a fantastic website, all kinds of great articles, and you've got all of the Beyonce articles hosted there as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, in the late 1940s, The Wizard of Oz was chosen to be the basis for the trauma-based programming. And one of the most important concepts that they tell the slaves is having them go, quote unquote, over the rainbow. And this is, disassociating to another personality.
Oh, wow.
And the Yellow Brick Road is a script that they have to follow no matter what scary thing lies ahead, right?
Okay.
And so, let's see.
You've also got that through the Looking Glass theme that is prevalent there too.
Years again, and so Frank Baum, he was a member of the Theosophical Society, which influenced Hitler and Aleister Crowley, and he was supposedly inspired by, quote, some spirit who gave him the magic key to write the story of Wizard of Oz, which came out in 1900, right?
Yep.
And the word Oz is important to Thelemic magicians. When you go into gematria, the Hebrew word Oz is spelled with ayin and zayin, which adds up to 77. So Beyonce has this brand new video called 7-Eleven.
Wow, you're kidding.
No, and so I wrote this little paragraph in the book, and I wanted to put it in, even though it might be over some people's heads, talking about gematria and Hebrew letters and all that. But what they think is that the number 77 represents magic acting on the world of matter and can be expressed as 11, which is the grand number of ritual magic, and 7 is the number of manifestation. So you get 7-11 right there. Mm-hmm. And also this goes to Oz because Crowley had a chapter called Liber Oz, which contains the basic creed of the Thelemites, which is there's no God but man, and the slaves shall serve.
Wow.
Right. So whenever you see, Dorothy programming, any type of, so they put these triggers in their lives all the time because they want the slave to be disassociated at all times and never know what's real and what's fantasy.
Okay.
And so let's say you were tortured and Wizard of Oz was one of your one of your triggers. How could you ever escape the imagery of that when it's so pervasive in popular culture?
Wow.
Whenever they see this, their mind wants to recall the trauma, but the brain won't let it. Mm-hmm. And so they're stuck in this, disassociative state. And so they want to keep them there at all times. And so this goes into Alice in Wonderland too, which is number 9, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's the same as Wizard of Oz, Fantasyland, what's reality, what is not, you said through the Looking Glass. And so this is actually a big one I put on here because the author of Alice in Wonderland, he's kind of the patron saint of pedophiles, because it's already dead, everybody who's associated with him is dead. But if you go back and look at the records, he was very, very creepy towards little children. He would take out this little girl named Alice Liddell, and this is where he said he got the ideas to write Alice in Wonderland, hanging out with this little girl. You read his letters that he wrote to children, you're like, creepy.
Right.
He would take them out and photograph them naked. He said, girls, I don't see why girls need to wear little clothes. I want to photograph them all naked. Uh-huh. They found these pictures on his computer. Today he'd be registering with the sheriff downtown as a sex offender, right? But right. This is one of the most classic children's books that there is.
Wow, that is incredible.
And so number 10, we kind of talked a little bit about Marilyn Monroe but Marilyn Monroe obsession and, Britney Spears won't go anywhere without her DVD collection of Marilyn Monroe movies. I have a picture here of Beyonce poses Marilyn Monroe. You can pretty much type in any of the big pop stars and they'll have them posed as Marilyn Monroe. Now I'm writing this new book and it's coming out really fast and it's just about celebrity mind control and I didn't really have a plan for it, but it just popped up and so I made this what I call a statistically impossible grid. And so if you don't think that this stuff is real, how would I be able to take Britney Spears, Beyonce, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, and Mariah Carey. These are just 5 of the first ones off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. And I picked 5 of the top 10 things I just explained to you, and I have images for every one. So I have Britney posed with a butterfly. I have Britney dressed as a kitty. I have Britney doing the hand sign. I have Britney in S&M. I have Britney as Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
I have Beyonce with the Monarch butterfly on her eye, of all things, you know. Mm-hmm. I have her as a sex kitten doing the hand sign. So each one of them, I put them in this, you know, matrix, and they all have these signs on them. I have a picture here of Katy Perry dressed as Marilyn Monroe. I have Gaga. She says she channeled Marilyn Monroe for the photo shoot. The newest one, Miley, she's actually pretty nude as Marilyn Monroe. You can see her nipples through her shirt.
Yikes.
And Mariah Carey even owns Marilyn Monroe's piano. She identifies with her so much.
Wow. Okay, so that essentially says if you can look at anybody in pop culture and attribute at least 5 of these aspects to them, that you're almost guaranteed you're looking at a Monarch programming victim. Mm-hmm. Do you find that it's more prevalent in women pop stars than men?
I do, mm-hmm. But there are also aspects of it that they need the men for, and I think Delta programming is a big one. So this is like spy programming. This is where they create a Bourne identity character, you know, Jason Bourne, who is just right. a programmed super soldier. So how many of these Hollywood stars are masters in kung fu and martial arts, and how easy is it for them to travel internationally and go and have doors open for them where they wouldn't be otherwise? And so they use these people as assassins. They use them, like I said, as couriers and information. You know, you can implant a message into somebody, make them forget, send them on their way to the person that they want to deliver the message to. The person on the other end has the trigger, they access the message, and then they wipe it clean. It's all very, very, very technical. And when you read Fritz Springmeier's 2 giant tomes on Monarch mind control, mm-hmm. It's like you got to put your thinking cap on, because they put so much work into this, and it's so technical how they can structure a person's brain to be just basically a human computer.
Mm-hmm. When I just finished reading a book called Journey into Madness, which was talking about the CIA's trying to do, you know, psychic driving and the use of isolation chambers and things like that. And this is all going on back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And some of the things that they were doing back then were very frightening. And I can only imagine, you know, where we're at nowadays. I got a question that came to me via email. One of my friends out there, we were talking about the hand signals that all of these people are using. Mm-hmm. And, you know, one of the things that we believe here at Red Pill Reports is that obviously there is a collective consciousness that's going on, and the power of intention is very, very important. And so my friend wanted to know, in your opinion, what are the ramifications of the global populace starting to utilize those symbols, you know, and showing them to their friends and things like that? Or you know, what's the long-term result of that?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said before, they're trying to take what they've figured out how to do to a single body and do it to an entire population. Mm-hmm. So if you have everybody agreeing with this, if you have everybody saying that this is fine, you know, we identify with the bondage, we identify with the sex programming, we identify with all these things, it's almost like giving them permission to continue.
Do you think they're going to push the boundary, though? I mean, obviously Katy Perry summoning Satan at the VMAs was, mm-hmm. to me, a high watermark in the creepy meter scale. Do you think because they were able to do that and get away with it, that we'll see more extravagant, ridiculous? I mean, is Satan himself going to show up on a stage at some point?
Well, isn't she going to be at the Super Bowl now? So she's had her big coming out as a witch. And she even said, in an early interview, you know, I wanted to be a Christian star. I wanted to be like the next James Grant of music, but then I sold my soul to the devil, and now look, here I am. So speaking of Katy Perry, I just read an article about her in Rolling Stone, and it's the one where she's got green hair on the cover. Mm-hmm. And throughout the entire thing, she's crying, and she can't figure out why she's crying. So they show up for the interview, and she's on her treadmill, and she's bawling, and she's like, why am I crying? And so they follow her, doing her daily things. And here's another thing about Katy Perry, which really stuck out to me and is proof that when you sell your soul to the devil, you are getting the bad end of the deal, because he is a freaking slave driver.
Right.
Literally. Taskmaster. I mean, her tour schedules are so intense. The only thing that she can do on a show day is try and repair her body from the night before and get it ready to do it all over again. And so this is another way they just keep them exhausted. They keep them working, and they say, this is what you want. This is what you have to do. Now that you have entered this level of success, you just keep go, and never get a break. And I think this is one of the things that led to her divorce with Russell Brand.
Oh, okay.
Is that they were always separated.
Do you think Russell Brand is involved? Because he seems like he is very, very smart. I'm on the fence about him.
That's another thing, like when you ask me about Jim Carrey, I'm like, I don't think he purposely thinks I am part of the Illuminati and I'm here to deceive the world into the path of Satanism. No, he doesn't think that. Russell Brand doesn't think that. But the weird thing about him is that his logo for his show Brand X is the Mark of the Beast, which we've identified through the Typhonian tradition of magic. Mm-hmm. And there's this weird clip that you can watch him when Katy Perry on the red carpet, and she's starting to say something, and he flashes this little thing that says obey, this little hand, something in his hand, and then says obey.
Right.
And he just kind of switches altars.
Really?
I think he's doing his best, okay? I think they're all just doing what they think is right based on the information that they have, and which is, not enough.
Right.
And if you're not talking about Monarch program, I mean, I watched a 40-hour documentary on rock and roll and Satanism and rock and roll and Aleister Crowley and rock and roll.
Right.
It was really, really good. It was excellent, actually. But within those 40 hours, they never once mentioned the military. They never once mentioned MKUltra. They never once mentioned Monarch programming. This is highly suspicious, and this is why I wouldn't follow people like Mark Dice.
Right.
Because he just said, they're satanic sluts and blah, blah, blah. But he's not taking into account that they're actually victims of this trauma, and they don't really have a say over their own career. They don't have a say over what they're doing. They're being told what to do. They're being programmed what to do. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the things that come out in their art, like you watch these videos sometimes now, especially Miley Cyrus, and you're like, what the heck are they thinking? Are they like on drugs? And which most people would just say, this is too bizarre. Why is this? And so this is part of their trauma programming coming out in their art, because art is therapy, right? And one of the first things when they're trying to heal the Monarch people is like, go paint, draw, write, keep a journal, anything you can, to document your experiences. And so I think that this Monarch program is trickling out through their art, or traumatizing people on one level and then getting them familiarized with the satanic imagery on the other level.
I think you're totally right. And that makes my brain want to ask the broader question of who are the handlers, who are the corporate investors that are making this happen. Obviously, my brain goes to Disney right off the bat. What are Disney's correlation with all these people?
Okay, so let me say something about handlers. Like I said before, in this hierarchy of witchcraft, is you have to become the abuser to break the cycle of your own abuse. So once you come to this level, they train a slave to become a handler in the future. Does that make sense? So it's not someone who's like, I'm a bad guy and I'm going to just have all these slaves. They're part of it too. They're a victim of it too. And they're trained to be handlers.
Okay. So is that what we're seeing then as, the Disney kids come and they're growing up, or we're seeing them go from a transition between being victims to now where they're looking to victimize others?
Exactly.
Wow. So do we have any evidence or instances of people who have gone through that programming, making that switch, like these pop culture people who are now abusive?
Yeah, who I would say would be Jay-Z.
Right.
I think he was a little bit ahead of Beyonce in the whole hierarchy. He's friends with Warren Buffett. He has his hands in pretty much every giant financial deal going on. He's in bed with Barclays, Bank of England, through his stadium in Brooklyn. So I think he had to go through the trauma initiation And then when he graduated, as a handler, he could then take on Beyonce and handle her.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to come back to our discussion. We were talking about the instances that people can recognize in terms of pop people, that they might be victims. But and one of the things about being in radio, especially with our brand of information, is we get approached by a lot of people just generally. And as one of the things you have to be aware of is that some of those people might not have your best interests at heart. Some of those people might be plants. Some of those people might be trying to give you information to make you look bad and things like that. So for people like us that are approached by people, all the time that want to either come on the show or share information, are there other things that we could recognize about them that maybe the pop culture kids aren't demonstrating that would also give us an indication? And what might those be?
Well, if you knew a person who you think might be a victim of this in real life and they have no idea, I think the first question you should ask them is if they are missing time.
Okay.
If they sometimes are somewhere and they wake up and they're somewhere else, they don't know how they got there. Everyone else around them thinks that they're normal, but inside their mind they're just missing time. They have no idea what happened. And there's a really good book about this called 22 Faces that I read that just totally stood out to me, that these people are super complex people. They're more than one person, and so these personalities grow up with the core personality, what they call, the first personality, the actual person. But as these personalities grow, they become real people too. Mm-hmm. So how do you separate, the one from the other? And it's almost like a death. It has to be integration in the future, but it's almost a death of this one person to make way for the core personality to come out.
Okay. So missing time would be one big thing.
Missing time, military in the family.
Right.
Would be another red flag, because this is all done through military. Mm-hmm.
What about somebody coming from like an orphanage type background?
Yeah, definitely. I think that they use the rejection. They use the love that the child needs, and so they do this love bombing where they give it love and affection and then they take it away, and so that's a trauma.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other any other indicators that we could be looking for?
In a person or a celebrity?
In a person, in a close friend or something like that.
Yeah, missing time, military in the family, a very controlling family. So this all goes back to Babylon, right? And what they call Moriah is the name for the mind control program.
Okay.
And so this is really ancient, and these families have kept it secret for thousands of years, and they've infiltrated communities. They've placed their people who are actually, Satan worshipers from birth, raised to be that way. And they put them as doctors, they put them as teachers, they put them as community, so that they can have access to people without raising suspicion.
Okay. So like your community leaders then, people,
Yeah.
assistant principals of high schools and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other indicators that we should be on heightened alert about?
I guess hypersexuality and other mental issues. If they're in therapy a lot, if they are having, lots of mental problems, existential crisis, stuff like that, they might have these memories that they're trying to break through that they can't. And so a lot of therapists even don't believe. So there was even a movement in the 90s, and I wrote about this in Weird Stuff too, about them trying to get out their experiences of satanic ritual abuse in therapy, and the therapists don't believe them, and they actually have this committee that they put together. I can't remember the name of it right now. False memory syndrome.
Ah, okay.
So what they found was all these people were reporting the same type of activity and abuse from their childhood, satanic rituals, hooded clothes, people, the whole shebang, and then they would tell their therapist, and their therapist was like, well, you're false remembering. This is made up. This is, too fantastical to believe. It has to be something else.
Right.
But what was really the nail in the coffin was like people from all walks of life and from all parts of the world were describing the same type of rituals. And so how is that possible if this was a localized thing or if they're making it up?
Right. Well, it would show to me that psychiatry and psychology are implicit in this agenda also then, which makes sense to me because it stands to reason that just about any industry that we've got now would have to be involved with all of this, you know.
Mm-hmm. You know, Sigmund Freud, I read a lot about him in Weird Stuff Part 1, how his nephew kind of was a big player in this culture creation, Edward Bernays. But Sigmund Freud kept coming across these people who were saying that they had gone through these satanic rituals as a child as well, and he just didn't believe them either. And so he's kind of like the godfather of modern psychiatry, right?
Right.
He's a Kabbalist. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic. Jamie, I can't thank you enough for joining us on the show. We're just about out of time today. I want to recommend everybody who wants to learn more about you to go to freemantv.com. And is there anything else that you want to leave us with, some closing thoughts there, Jamie?
Yeah, this is really scary stuff, but I think that we need to wonder without fear, and we need to look at the evidence without the blinders of our program's responses. Everyone wants to think that they know how the world works, but they really don't.
I agree, and I'm hopeful that you'll join us again, maybe next month sometime.
Sure.
Awesome. Jamie, thanks again for being here on the Red Pill Reports today. Tomorrow, I want to let everybody know Ala Dask will be our guest. We'll be talking about man and other animals and the important legal distinctions to be made and why they are so important. So do tune in tomorrow for that. Thank you guys for being here.
We think first of vague words that are synonyms for progress and pair them with footage of a high-speed train. Science is doing lots of stuff that may or may not have anything to do with us. See how this guy in a lab coat holds up a beaker? That means we do research. But we also do business in the USA, or want you to think we do. Check out this wind energy thing in Indiana, and this blue-collar guy with dirt on his face. Lest you think we're a faceless entity, look at all these attractive people. Using a specific ratio of Asian people to black people to women to white men, we want to make sure we represent your needs and interests, or at least a version of your skin color in our ads. Did we put a baby in here? Yep.